Buongiorno, it's Mrs. Arreguy. We are going to fly to Italy. So here we go. We are in America, the continent of North America, and let's go all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, and let's land right here on this little boot. Do you see this little boot right here? That is the country of Italy, and it is in the continent of Europe. And you see Europe right here. Italy is just a small country, and it looks like a little boot. Anyway, I'm going to read you a story about Leonardo da Vinci, one of the most famous artists in the world. This man was a genius. They called him a Renaissance man. And what that means is that's a person with many, many talents, somebody who can do a lot of things and do them well. So he was known as a Renaissance man. So here is a picture of Leonardo. That was actually a painting done by someone of Leonardo. He's has that long beard. If you've even watched Cinderella, you see that old man with a beard. Of course, he's playing Leonardo, but that's what Leonardo looked like. He had that big white beard and hair. And anyway, let me show you one of Leonardo's very most famous painting. And I bet you recognize this. This is the Mona Lisa, which is the most famous painting in the world. No one really knows who this lady is. They think she is the wife of a rich banker, but there are many questions about who is this lady. Okay, another very famous painting done by Leonardo is The Last Supper, and there it is. I'll move it in a little closer so that you can see. That is The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Now, he didn't do a whole lot of paintings, or let me say this. He did a lot of paintings, but he didn't finish a lot of his work because he did so many things. Like, he was an architect, he was an engineer, he was an inventor, an artist. He did so much. Which is why he's called a Renaissance man, and why he didn't finish a lot of things, because he was interested in learning, which is, I think we should all be, right? We should all be interested in learning a lot of things. Now, Leonardo was born, get this, 568 years ago. That's a long time. 568 years ago. But anyway, I want to read this story. Leonardo and the Flying Boy. Now, this is a story, and this is by Lawrence Anholt, but this is not a biography, but it does tell a story about Leonardo and some of his pupils, some of his students. So this is Leonardo and the Flying Boy. One word that you are going to hear in here is studio. Now, a studio is a place where someone works, doing artwork, or pretty much a workplace for someone that likes to do art. So here we go. I'm going to start. I hope you can see the pages there. Okay. There were no spaceships or airplanes when Zorro was a boy. The sky belonged to the birds. But one man dreamed of something incredible. One day, Zorro, he told his pupil, people will sail through the clouds and look down at the world below. Anything is possible. The man with the amazing dream and a beard like a wizard was Leonardo da Vinci. Anything seemed possible in Leonardo's busy studio. He was a painter, a sculptor, a musician, and a scientist. Sometimes he showed Zorro his beautiful notebooks where 1,000 ideas spilled from every page. "We must try to understand everything," said the great genius. How does life begin? How does a plant grow? How do the planets move? And how could a person fly like a bird? But when Zorro tried to read the books, he found them written back to front. And there you see how Leonardo would write backwards. There was one place where Zorro could never go. One mysterious workshop where the door was always locked. No one was allowed in there except Leonardo himself. Zorro longed to know what was inside. Maybe it's a fantastic sculpture, he thought, or a huge war machine. In the studio, everyone had to work hard. Zorro mixed colors, cleaned brushes, and practiced his drawings. "When I am a grown-up, I will have my own studio," he said, "and a secret workshop, too." "Of course you will, Zorro," smiled Leonardo. Leonardo was a kind man. If he found an animal that was sick or hungry, he would bring it home for his pupils to take care of. But one day, Leonardo found something very strange. He dragged the wild and noisy creature into the studio, where it kicked and fought and spat at the great artist. "What is it?" asked Zorro. "It's a boy," laughed Leonardo, "a very wild boy. He's never been to school, and his mother is too poor to take care of him. She begged me to give him some work before he ends up in prison." The wild boy grabbed Leonardo's hand and bit very hard. Leonardo pretended to be angry, but Zorro could see that he was laughing. "I'll call you Salai," said Leonardo. "It means little devil, and that's exactly what you are." So Salai came to stay in the studio, and although he was a bad boy, everyone grew to like him. "But you can't wear those rags," said Leonardo. "I'm going to buy you a real velvet suit and some shoes. Now, where did I leave my money?" They searched high and low until at last Zorro found the money hidden in Salai's filthy coat. Zorro couldn't believe it. Who would dare to steal from Leonardo da Vinci? Day after day, Leonardo dreamed up inventions of every kind. Zorro was amazed to see a parachute, the very first bicycle, a deadly war machine, a gadget for walking on water, a life preserver, and a diving suit. Once he built a machine for cutting and polishing glass and made himself a pair of spectacles. "Now I can keep an eye on Salai," he said, winking at Zorro. Early one morning, Leonardo took Zorro into town to look for interesting faces to draw when he noticed someone especially beautiful or unusually ugly. Leonardo would follow them, making dozens of sketches. They came to the market where a lady was selling birds in tiny cages. Leonardo looked at the birds. Then, to Zorro's surprise, he bought them all. But instead of taking the birds home as pets, Leonardo told Zorro to open the cages. Everybody stared. No one could understand. "A bird should be free," said Leonardo. "Look, Zorro, can you see how their wings push against the air? It gives me an idea." Leonardo began to run. As soon as he got home, he locked himself in the secret workshop again. Zorro could hear hammering and sawing from inside. Hour after hour, Zorro waited, but Leonardo wouldn't stop for food or drink. What on earth was he building? It must be something incredible, thought Zorro, something no one has ever dreamed of. At last he fell asleep on the step outside. Leonardo began a wonderful painting of a woman called Mona Lisa. She had to sit for weeks without moving, so Leonardo paid acrobats and musicians to keep her from getting bored. Zorro stared at the dreamy green mountains and the twisting rivers. Surely no one has painted anything so perfect, he thought. The face in the painting was smiling, a mysterious, gentle smile. It's as if she knows some secret, thought Zorro, as if she has seen inside that locked room. Suddenly, Salai crept up behind him. Come with me, Zorro, he hissed. I'll show you something more interesting than the picture. Salai looked very suspicious. He dragged Zorro out of the studio and quietly down the stairs. At the door of the secret workshop, Salai pulled out a big bunch of keys. You stole them? Gasped Zorro. Leonardo will throw you back on the street. Salai only laughed and unlocked the door. Zorro knew he shouldn't be there. He should turn and run to Leonardo, but he just had to see inside the secret room. Zorro couldn't believe his eyes. An extraordinary machine filled the room. Its wings were like a great eagle's. Help me pull it down, ordered Salai. If we wait until Leonardo is ready, we will never fly. Anyway, you are the only one small enough to fit in the machine. It was made for you. You will be the flying boy. Leonardo will be furious, whispered Zorro. Not when he sees you flying above the studio, shouted Salai. Come on, Zorro, help me. So as Leonardo worked upstairs, Salai and Zorro hauled and dragged the heavy machine out of the workshop, along the streets and far into the fields. Salai pointed to the highest hill. We will try the machine from there, he said. As the sun set, they reached the top. Now, panted Salai, just lie in here. When you pedal, the wings will flap. Zorro was shaking. He felt ill. Maybe the machine isn't finished, he cried. We should be patient. But Salai was already strapping Zorro into the machine and dragging it toward the edge of the hill. Zorro was terrified. He began to shout. Suddenly there was a gust of wind. Salai pushed, and the flying machine left the ground. Zorro looked down at the world below. He was sobbing with fear, but for a few seconds, he flew like a bird. And there's Salai. Do you see him up there? It works! It works! Shouted the wild boy from below. But something was wrong. The bird was too heavy. Zorro pedaled and pulled, but the machine began to fall. At that moment, Leonardo came running across the fields. Zorro tugged on the ropes and screamed as the machine fell like a stone and crashed into a tree. Leonardo himself pulled Zorro's limp body from the wrecked machine and carefully carried him home. Salai followed slowly, his head hanging in shame. Zorro was lying in bed. His leg hurt. His head was wrapped in bandages. Oh, Zorro, said Leonardo sadly, it doesn't surprise me that Salai would disobey me, but you? Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps people will never fly. We are not birds. From now on, I will stick to painting. No, said Zorro quietly. Remember what you told me. One day, people will fly. The machine was too heavy, that's all. Leonardo thought for a moment. Then he jumped up. Yes, he shouted, and the wings should be longer, like this. And he threw open his notebook and began to work, slowly and patiently until a beautiful drawing appeared, a new flying machine, more amazing than ever. And while he worked, Leonardo began to smile, a mysterious, gentle smile, as if he could see far into the future, where boys and girls, just like Zorro, would sail through the clouds. And anything is possible. Now, do you see how Leonardo, over 500 years ago, had already pretty much invented all these things? He invented a flying machine, a bicycle, a lot of things that weren't invented hundreds of years later. So now you know why he's called a Renaissance man, a man with a lot of knowledge. But he studied a lot. He studied birds all the time. And like you saw in here in the book, or you heard in the book, he would buy birds and just let them go, just so that he could watch them and study them. So I hope that Leonardo da Vinci encourages you to learn more and do more. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that story. And again, this is in the library, and this is by Lawrence Anhalt. So if you want to check this book out, go to the library and get it. All right, let's sing our recycling song. Again, I hope you are recycling and not wasting, and maybe using a reusable bottle or a cup so that we're not having to throw any plastic away. All right, boys and girls, here we go. Reduce, reuse, recycle. We must do all three. If we don't, our planet will suffer. That's a reality. All right, I will see you next time. Goodbye.